All right, guys, back on Southeastern 16 with Max Barr, previewing a little game taking place in Tuscaloosa, Alabama on Saturday. Number 1, Auburn. Number 2, Alabama. If you want to go by the coaches poll, flip the order. You got two number ones here facing off in Tuscaloosa. The ultimate showdown, the biggest game in the history of the rivalry, Max. First time ever, 1 versus 2 in the SEC. What do you know? Auburn and Alabama are those two teams, and let's get ready. Let's get ready for this one.
Yeah, this is the big one. Like, nervous. I'm nervous going into the preview here. This is, you mentioned it's the number 1 versus the number 1. Looking at the two, the AP and the coaches, 5th such matchup of number 1 versus number 1. The last time this happened was 2019. It was when Duke and Virginia met up. Duke was 15-2. Virginia was 16-1. It has been 6 years, Blake, since we've seen a number 1 in the AP versus number 1 in the coaches. The all-time series history is on my Twitter page. If you want to go check it out for the entire series of number 1 versus number 2, or you could just go digging through the NCAA record book like a psycho might do. The last time that this happened was Zags UCLA a few years ago, and a great follower of mine, Scott Matthews, is probably watching this. Scott found out that the home team is 12-6 when you meet between number 1 and number 2. Historic stuff, Blake. Historic stuff.
Be honest with me. Do you know who you're picking yet?
Nope.
No, me either. All right, so we've established that. Neither of us have a clue who we're actually going to pick in this game that we're previewing. But we will make picks by the end of it, I promise. You can tell our confidence level very high. But let's start here, okay? Give me... I feel like we've talked about this, but we're gonna probably repeat some of this in the video. Let's start with Auburn, okay? If you're going to win this game, the path to victory is pretty simple, I would think. That is to try to slow Alabama down in transition, not allow them to get out and go. And I want to say that by also acknowledging, like, yes, I'm aware that Auburn can get out and go too in transition. But if we're just talking about Alabama playing their game, I still think Alabama is the best at playing Alabama's game, right? There's not a lot of people that are going to beat Alabama at their own game. So I feel like from Auburn's perspective, the path to victory here is doing that. We've mentioned what were some of the things that like an Ole Miss had success with. Well, it was Alabama turning the ball over 21 times, right? So if you're Auburn, you want to try to be a little bit disruptive, especially maybe on the perimeter and trying to, kind of disrupt some of the things that Alabama's trying to do offensively. We have talked about Auburn's tendency to foul a little bit, and that could come into play here with an Alabama team that likes to shoot a lot of free throws, but we'll get to that in a second. What else, Max, from Auburn's perspective, is the key to the victory here?
Defensive rebounding.
Yeah,
got to keep Alabama off the offensive. Well, I mean, hey, listen, this is the matchup between the two best teams in the nation. Okay, so there's going to be elite areas everywhere. Yeah. Alabama in conference play, they're hitting the O boards about maybe 1.5% less often than Texas A&M. They're right there with the Aggies with the offensive rebounding numbers. And Auburn defensive rebounding right now ranks 14th in SEC play. And you already know the intensity of this game, the physicality of this game, the way it might be called is going to have a big impact on it. But just that physicality down low, putting a body on a body, boxing out, 5 minutes into the game, a little bit tired. You just, nerves are at an all-time high. Oh, here comes Mo Diabate wanting to take someone's head off. It's going to be a constant attack into those O boards for Alabama. Auburn has got to keep them off those boards, Blake.
Yeah, that is going to be important. And again, you kind of look at they didn't do the worst job. Florida only had 11 offensive rebounds, I think, in that game. Of course, it really didn't matter based on how the game played out. But That was something, and yeah, so I think you mentioned that's a great point, like the offensive rebounding aspect with Vanderbilt having 16, just not something you expected in that matchup. So that's got to trend better in this game for sure when you look at it from that standpoint for them. All right, and we're going to be all over the place here previewing this game, but like to the Alabama side of things, I think we've talked about if there's one of those things, and I feel like we mentioned this going into the Vanderbilt game, right? And someone even pointed out on Twitter, they're like, I think you guys may have been right about this when that game against Vanderbilt got a little interesting. Vanderbilt took the lead there at some point. Shot selection for Auburn, and maybe that being something that can come into play here. And the reason I mentioned that is specifically the atmosphere and the environment. When you get in a game like this where you're playing a team like Alabama, like we said, if Alabama plays their game, they get out in transition, they hit a couple threes, all of a sudden you find yourself down by 8 or something. You start pressing. You take a few more bad shots than you normally would, right? Auburn cannot put itself in that position, and that's why I think if you're Alabama, and we talked about like Auburn's defense has not gotten enough credit this year because they've just been so good offensively. I don't think Alabama's defensive improvement has gotten enough credit, and I think specifically when you look at the way they've played at times on the defensive end, they've done some good things. They're going to play higher scoring games naturally, right? Just because of how many possessions there are and the way their game is sort of formatted, I guess you could say. You just kind of know what the script is for Alabama game in and game out. But I think that's something too. When you look at this Alabama team, they don't force a lot of turnovers. We know that. We talked about it. But if they can just find some ways to at least apply some of that pressure, I think, on the Auburn guard specifically, force them into taking bad shots. And I think that's too, right? We know if the ball gets down in the paint, you've got Broome down there. You're going to get some double team combinations, all that, where Auburn's going to be able to kick out for some shots. I think that's it. Alabama find a way to make Auburn take shots that they don't want to take. And really, I think that sort of element of frustration and forcing them into some bad shots is really kind of the key here.
I think you nailed it. I think you really did nail it. Because when you look at the point distribution also and kind of the style, Alabama defensively, the thing they rate the best at out of every single category you could look at for a defensive profile, their highest rated category is their defensive assist rate. They are 8th in the nation in limiting opponent assists. They really force you into isolation and don't let that ball reversal happen. That's very interesting now in a game where we're kind of harping on Auburn's shot selection. You guys have the best offensive rating in the history of Ken Palm's offensive rating. But it's starting to settle, starting to get a little bit uncomfortable at times. The thing with Alabama's defense is they are dead last in the SEC in opponent, it would be called the best actually, but opponent points from 3. They limit the points from 3. They're really not letting you get a ton up, but however, where they're 16th in that, they are first in points from 2. So they're not letting you shoot a lot, but opponents against Alabama are scoring the majority of their points from inside. This is going to be one of those games, Blake, where we're going to be watching it in the first 5-10 minutes. Do those bunnies skip out for Broome, Cardwell, and Johnson? Or do those bunnies find the roll, hit the backboard again, and go in? And now you're not down 4, you're tied. Stuff like that. Those little bunnies early in the first half to determine, are you playing from behind? Are you playing with the lead? Going to be really, really big.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to play a role here without a doubt. And something else, I think when we look at just the statistical numbers, and we brought this up before, and I'm trying to find the actual number here in terms of where they rank now. But Auburn 268th in the country in fouls per game, right? And what do we always talk about when we mention Alabama? We know that if you look at where they rank now nationally, they're still 7th. Yeah, they had to be in the top 10. 7th in the country in free throw attempts per game, 26.5. So it's like if you put that combination together, Auburn fouls a little bit, Alabama gets to the free throw line. Again, that's Alabama playing Alabama's game. And I think that's something, again, you have to try to avoid here, because I'm sure we could do the splits too on how many free throws Alabama has shot at home this season, in terms of like seeing, okay, we know they get to the free throw line, but how many, home versus away, those kind of things. I'm sure those numbers are out there, but that's something else. Like if you're Auburn, we mentioned how the game can change a little bit in terms of if you get in a certain guy in foul trouble or all that. It's a deep team, and the depth has been one of the strengths of this Auburn team. But especially in a game like this against Alabama, another team that just is so deep in the way they're playing, that's crucial for the Tigers on the road here.
Pace is really going to have, you mentioned it to start,
Yeah.
but now that we're diving into the matchup, it's going to be pretty clear whose game is being played, whether it's up and down, being Alabama's, whether it's a little bit more in the half court, being Auburn. But Blake, this is pretty crazy here. So we've got the two top offenses in the nation, with Auburn being number 1 on KenPom, Alabama being number 2 on KenPom. Alabama, these are 2 top 10 offensive ratings in the history of KenPom right now.
Yeah.
2 of the best offenses we've seen in some time facing off in the regular season. I think I know where I'm going. I think I've found my path to my pick.
Here we go.
When you look at the conference only numbers, they are a little bit skewed because we did have the Broom injury, right? Did have the Broom injury. He was out for a game or two, and now we've got Chad Baker-Mazara dealing with a little bit of an injury. But when you do look at just the conference only stuff, because Alabama's had injuries as well, this is not a one-way street. Alabama's got the better offensive efficiency, and the defense is pretty much even, pretty much right there. Everything is telling me, Blake, everything is telling me, everything. Go with the home team, go with the Tide, go with Alabama. That's where everything's pointing me. But Max has just got a little bit of a gut feeling, but he's not going to go with it. Alabama.
I was like, Max was about to be a rebel for like 0.3 seconds there, and then all of a sudden he goes back to picking the home team. You said it, 12-6, right? The home teams in these kind of spots. So you're going to play the percentages here. With that, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I thought you were about to say what I was about to say, and that is everything is telling me to pick Alabama here. I mean, I just look at the way this sets up, and we keep saying Alabama has just been playing ridiculous basketball these days. Yes, like we talk about the final stretch against Arkansas and all that, but again, I think that's way more about Arkansas. Alabama at home, I mean, we talked about kind of the point totals they put up and all those things, right? Everything is telling me to pick Alabama. But I keep going back to the body of work that Auburn has put together as well. And again, I think these two teams have the reason to be the top 2 in the country in terms of the overall resumes they put together. So it's not a surprise that this is where we are with these two teams. But I still keep thinking about it, and I'm like, Auburn, just because they lost a game by 9 at home to Florida, I feel like that maybe changes people's opinion a little bit of them. But I'm like, they're still 22-2. They still have 13 quad 1 wins. They've been in these games so many times this season. And if there is one thing, Max, that I think actually you look at Auburn and the potential advantage here. Now, you could say this could be a disadvantage too. The emotion that Auburn plays with on the road, they are going to relish this kind of atmosphere, being like the underdog, the Detroit Pistons, if you will, of coming in saying, bring it on. I feel like this is the kind of team that absolutely thrives on that. And so I'm going to pick Auburn here in this one. I know that will stun Alabama fans, but Alabama fans should also be happy, because I feel like anytime I pick Alabama and we get in kind of that scenario, you never know. So I'm going to pick Auburn, Max. Not confident about it, but I'm going to pick the Tigers. What do we think the spread's going to be? Have we established that yet?
I originally thought it was going to be Auburn by 1.5. I'm now at a -110, -110, even pick 'em.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think. But we'll know.
So
Vegas will tell us immediately. They will let us know. If it comes out Alabama's like a 2-point favorite, we're going to be like, uh-oh.
You might want to change your pick after that.
I might change my pick. I'd like to reserve the right to change my pick if Alabama comes out as a 2-point favorite in this game.
This was so this is an angle, and this kind of plays into why I picked Alabama. Bruce Pearl said after the game, Chad is flat out banged up. He's been limited in practice. He hasn't gotten enough reps. We need to get him rest and get him healthy. How many times do we talk about how important the stuff is that Chad Baker-Mazara brings to the team? Just him, just going on the road and playing at Alabama with him being less than 100%. Broom still working through the ankle. I feel like if we both picked Auburn, we would come back and then it lost. We'd come back in the post game and been like, would have been nice to know this. Would have been nice to know that. Yeah. We always do that. But definitely an angle there.
Bet the bad news, Max Barr. Have you not learned? Bet the bad news.
Do I got to change my pick now?
Let's be honest. We're both probably going to change our picks before tip-off. So if you're watching this on Thursday when this comes out, just check in with us like on Friday or Saturday before. We'll probably change our picks 10 times before then. Speaking of tournaments, as we say, you can take your college hoops experience to the next level once we get to March with our friends at BRACKETBIDS. We keep talking about them here. Remember, go join that free pick'em contest, or you can start an auction draft league to play with friends, family, or coworkers. Everyone starts with the same bidding dollars. Up to you to outwit and outbid your league mates to secure the teams you think will go the distance. Choose from multiple scoring models, including the upset bonuses to reward those bold picks. You can track your teams with live in-game scoring and watch the standings shift in real time. The further your teams advance, the higher you climb in the standings. That's how it works. For league play, use that promo code SC16, SC16 for 40% off. Download the BRACKETBIDS app today or visit them at bracketbids.com. But that's how it works when you got number one versus number two. The best prediction of all is that this is going to be awesome. This is, again, such a great thing, not just for SEC basketball, which we cover, but just for Auburn and Alabama. The programs themselves, 1 versus 2, what a showdown it will be. And we appreciate you guys watching as always. We'll be doing our watch along on Saturday. If you want to join us for that, join the It Just Means More tier here at Southeastern 16. Hit that join button, $3.99. That's all it takes to get in the door for watching that watch along with our members. So we appreciate you guys. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and we'll talk to you soon at Southeastern 16.